It's time to investigate the causes of political behavior. Political behavior occurs when an individual possesses the urge to further their own needs and goals. Researchers have shown that certain individuals' characteristics, organizational factors contributes to the matter. Start with individual factors. Researchers have identified certain personality traits, needs, and other factors that are likely to relate it to political behavior. The high self-monitor is more sensitive to social cues and is more likely to be skilled in political behavior than the low self-monitor. Individuals with internal locus of control are more prone to take proactive stance and attempt to manipulate the situation in their favor because they believe they control the environment. The Machiavellian personality, characterized by the desire for power and the will to manipulate, is comfortable using the politics as a means to further their own interests. The more that a person has invested in the organization, such as time, money, effort, the more the person has to lose, the less likely he or she is to use the illegitimate means. The more alternative job opportunities an individual has, a prominent reputation, or influential contacts outside the organization, the more likely he or she will risk illegitimate political actions. A low expectation of success in using illegitimate means diminishes the probability of its use. Last but not least are those people that engage in more political behavior because they simply better at it. Such individuals read interpersonal interactions well. They can fit their behavior to situational needs and excel at networking. Studies have shown that higher level of political skills are associated with higher level of perceived job performances. Political activity is probably more a function of the organization's characteristics than of individual difference variables. When an organization resources are declining, when the existing pattern of resources is changing, and when there is an opportunity for promotions, politics is more likely to surface. Cultures characterized by low trust, role ambiguity, unclear performance evaluation system, zero-sum reward allocation practices, democratic decision-making, high pressure for performance, and self-serving senior managers will create breeding grounds for politicking. When organizations downsize to improve efficiency, people may engage in political actions to safeguard what they have. Promotion decisions have consistently been found to be one of the most political in organizations. The less trust there is within the organization, the higher the level of political behavior, and the more likely it will be illegitimate. Role ambiguity means that the prescribed behaviors of the employee are not clear. There are fewer limits to the scope and the function of employees' political actions. The greater the role ambiguity, the more one can engage in political activity with little chance of it being visible. Subjective criteria in the appraisal process. Subjective performance criteria creates ambiguity. Single outcome measures encourage doing whatever is necessary to look good. The more time that elapses between an action and its appraisal, the more unlikely that the employee will be held accountable for his or her political behavior. The zero-sum approach treats the reward pie as fixed, so that any gain one person or group achieve has to come at the expense of another person or group. To say it in another way, if I win, you must lose. This encourages making others look bad and increasing the visibility of what you do. Making organization less autocratic by asking managers to behave more democratically is not necessarily embraced by all individual managers. Sharing their power with others run directly against some managers' desire. The result is that managers, especially those who began their careers in the 1950s and the 1960s, may use the required committees, conferences, and group meeting in a superficial. The more pressure that employees feel to perform well, the more likely they are going to engage in politics. If a person perceives that his or her entire career is riding on the next whatever, there is motivation to do whatever is necessary to make sure the outcome is favorable. When employees see top managers successfully engage in political behavior, a climate is created that supports politicking. How do people respond to political behavior, or should I say, the consequences of political behavior? Different peoples might have different reactions to this matter. They can feel positive or negative. But if you notice, employees or low-level managers are not happy with political behavior. Because only when we understand how things happen and why it happened, we can have neutral feelings about the matter. Organizational politics may threaten employees, and these are the 4 basic reactions. First, decrease job satisfaction, so that of course you will feel less satisfied because you have not expected that organizational politics is going to influence our job this much. Second, increase anxiety and stress, because simply organizational politics is one more thing we have to worry about rather than the job. Next, employee turnover. When the politicking becomes too much to handle, it can lead employee to quit. Finally, and it is the worst case scenario, is reduced performances. Employees found that political environments might be unfair and it demotivates them. When there is threat, humans develop its defense mechanism. When employees are acting defensively, they will become. When there's a threat, our body develops a defense mechanism. And in this case, if someone feels negative about politics in an organization, they develop a defensive behavior. In the long run, this can seriously damage the organization. Defensive behavior can be avoiding action, over-confirming, buck-passing, giving the responsibility to someone else, playing dumb, I don't know, therefore I don't do it, stretching, prolong a task so that one person appears to be occupied. For example, turning a 2-week job into 4-month job. Stalling, appears to be supportive in the public, but do the opposite privately. Defensive behavior can also be avoiding blame, such as bluffing, playing safe, justifying, scapegoating, placing the blame into some external factors that are not completely blameworthy, misrepresenting. Defensive behavior can also be avoiding changes, like prevention, trying to prevent a threatening change from occurring, or self-protection, acting in ways to protect one's self-interest during change by guarding information from other resources.
When the money's coming your way, you don't ask any questions. But now it's clear. Lanigan's never been anything but a front. Do I tell the president? No. He'll wonder why I didn't know, which makes me look uninformed, or he'll blame the messenger for involving him, which makes me look careless. No, it's a trap. I must keep this to myself.
You set me up, Frank.
What?
You're back-channeling, a special prosecutor. When I think about Raymond, about Linda, about Jim Matthews...
You are wrong, sir.
Questions from Dunbar about the marriage counseling. It's a needle in the haystack she's not trying to find. That's what you said. Well, she found the needle.
I am shocked, sir. I
like
never...
hell you are. You want to diminish me.
Diminish you?
Laying the groundwork for a challenge in 2016?
I am sorry to have to say this, sir, but you are being ludicrous.
Do you really think I'm so blind?
A vice president has never challenged a sitting president.
You've climbed the ladder doing things other men would never do.
Always in service to you and the party.
It was your idea to hand over those logs. You connected the White House to China, the casino.
Raymond Tusk entangled us with China and the casino, and if I hadn't intervened...
You can't dodge and duck like Floyd. I've learned your moves now.
This office breeds paranoia. Don't give in to it, sir.
Hi, my name is Lam, and upon my part, I will first talk about impression management, then the ethic of behaving politically, and finally, mapping of your political career. So, you probably have heard of the phrase, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So if you want your venture to success, it is essential that you take the time and get it right in the first instant. So, impression is the thing that will make or break your future in maybe your later days at the company. With your maybe your relationship with your supervisor or your coworker. People nowadays spend millions of their incomes on clothing, cosmetics, and perfume just to cater for the needs of perfecting the self-image in the other's eyes. And nice impressions can get you many benefits, especially when you're new to the company or new to that organization. That it can get you a good position, high salary, and promotion after, and maybe a valuable relationship with your leader or your co-workers. So to improve this aspect, people use a tool, or I would personally consider is a form of art. It is the art of impression management, or we also call it IM. IM is the process that an individual makes an attempt to control impression that other forms on them. The frequency of using IM varies from people to people. There are two types of characteristic. The first one is the low self-monitor. These kind of people tend to keep their personal image inconsistent with their real personality, regardless of the situations or the benefits. The high self-monitor, so as the name suggests, we can understand that they tend to control their self-image more. By the way of they will control their look or their behavior, and they will make it to fit the right situation. IM certainly is a handy and practical tool to improve the impressions of others. Use it properly with the right person in the right time. You will make a great progression in your career and your daily life. But IM is more powerful than just an ordinary tool. It's also a delicate art. So there's very fine line between professional, enthusiast, and insincere. Worse, sometimes it can be considered as manipulative, or people would even describe it as fake. Another thing, while evaluating the performance, If the manager assigns your previous behavior to impression management, that can make the manager feel angry because he or she doesn't like to be manipulated, especially on their emotional side or maybe on the perception. On the other hand, if that is attributed to concern for the organizations, they will feel happier, thus give you a higher performance rating. So we can clearly see that since IM can backfire easily, this tactic should always be handled with care. Different from what people usually think, talking oneself up is not always the most efficient way to improve the self-image. Occasionally, modesty is considered more effective in the forms of lowering your self-ego to understand your positions within a group or your contribution to the project, and give credits or compliments to others, co-workers in the group as well. This action can actually create a friendly and encouraging environment in the organizations, therefore gaining a positive impressions that others can form on you. To utilize impression management, let me introduce you to these 8 IM techniques divided into 4 forms. The very first form is ingratiation. So, what is ingratiation? It is a psychological technique in which an individual attempts to influence others by becoming more likable to the target. This simply means that they will become a nicer person in target's eyes. The first type of this form is conformity. Conformity means that agreeing with someone's opinion to gain his or her approval. Simply, for example, I will walk up to my boss and I will tell her that, wow, your plan is amazing. I couldn't agree more with you on that. The second type is a favor. A favor means that doing something nice to someone to gain his or her approval. This happens a lot in Vietnam. Maybe buying your boss a cup of coffee or some snack to make them feel that they are very likable. The second form is defensive IM techniques. The first type is excuse. This simply means that you will create an excuse to minimize your flaws. Maybe when you're late for a meeting and your boss asks why you're late, you will try to find an excuse like, my dad is sick, I have to drive him to the hospital, something like that. The second type of defensive IM techniques is apology. Like I can tell my boss that I'm sorry, I have made a mistake on this project, please forgive me. The third form of this is the self-focused IM technique. It includes self-promotion and enhancement. About self-promotion, it means that highlighting your best quality, downplaying your deficits, and calling attention to your achievement. For example, my team have created an amazing art, and I will tell everyone that the initial idea of the advertisement is mine, and my coworker have totally nothing to do with the success of that advertisement. The next type in the self-focused IM techniques is enhancement, claiming that something you did is more valuable than other members of the organization would think. Like, let me give an example. Maybe I work for Pepsi, and recently Pepsi have success to hand out the market a new type of drink that is really successful, and they can sell really well. I will claim that the successfulness of the product is because it's packaging which is designed by me. Well, and everybody else has the contribution of that is not that important to the success of the product. Although maybe the product is selling really well because of the beverage inside, or maybe it's beneficial for health. And finally, the last form of these IM techniques are assertive IM technique. The first type is flattery. It means that complimenting others about their virtues in an effort to make yourself appear perceptive and likable. Maybe I will say to my peer co-worker that I admire your leading and your communication skills so much. I don't think I will ever be in your position. Or maybe I will never be able to do that like you. And finally, the last type of assertive IM techniques is exemplification. It means that doing more than you need in an effort to show how dedicated and hardworking you are. If I work overtime, I will send my boss through my work email something to show that I'm working really late and I am dedicated toward the organization. In interviews, people will spend their time and effort to improve their appearance and make it seem that they are more professionals and more likable. Also, they will focus on explicit tactics, which are talking up about their accomplishments or praising their interviewers. And they also use verbal cues to show their enthusiasm. We should make a small note that IMs work better if the target is also the rater of your performance rather than just an observer, because high chance that all of your IM attempts later will only be considered as a sign that you are really friendly and dynamic, but they won't influence anybody on the human resource division at all. Another thing, when the interview is highly structured, IM will come in as less effective because we anticipated that the company already have the type of answer they are seeking for. So the answer is the actual important thing in this case. On the other hand, if the interview is ambiguous or unstructured, we will be more likely to correspond our behavior to the expressions of the interviewer. When doing research online, I came across some tips that might be useful in our future interviews. The first one is flattery. Don't praise the appearance of the interviewer because that can be considered as unprofessional and insincere. Just make positive comments on the achievement of the organizations and say that you admire some recent success projects and you want to become the part of the company because of that. Another type is conformity. Have you ever heard of mirroring and matching? Well, according to this theory, people feel most comfortable when they are in familiar setting. But central to this technique is mirroring the body language and monitor the speed of your voice to the interviewers. If your interviewer is sitting with their right leg crossed, you should cross your right leg too. And if your interviewer uses hand gesture, you should start to use that. And finally, you should make an attempt to try to match your tone and speed to the interviewer's voice. The last type, reflective listening. The key element to this is listening to what the interviewer is saying, then paraphrase what they just said, which in turn highlight that you are truly engaging and listening to them. You must put your own idea into the sentence. Just don't make yourself become a parrot. The next aspect where IM comes in useful is performance evaluation. In this case, ingratiation tends to relate positively with performance rating, thus receiving higher evaluation. On the contrary, self-focused strategies don't seem to work that good. Those applied to tactics can receive lower ratings than the actual rate. Or maybe along the project, they have made some mistake but they didn't acknowledge about. And going around and bragging about themselves isn't just the nicest thing to do. Instead, they should sit down and listen to others' comments on their work to improve further in the future. Political skill is one contributor to the successfulness of your impression management. Those who have a higher political skill can usually have more of the ability of turning their impression management into a higher performance rating. And those who have a lower political skill will tend to get hurt by their IM attempt because they can start using IM in a conversation easily, but they cannot read the body language, the facial expression, or the situation that good. And they don't have the communication skill to continue along with the conversation they have started. But if you do have that political skill, ingratiation with your supervisor can get you many benefits. So far, we have been discussing about impression management under the employee's perspective, but employers or the company use that too. Well, companies need to sell their job, the company culture, benefits, and the reasons why they are a great place for prospective employees to build their career. Employers, managers, and leaders use impression management in molding their appearance, their tone, and their body language to express power upon their subordinates. So let me show you a video clip.
Not since this hot mess of a three-way has a handshake gotten so much attention, clocked at almost 19 seconds. This became the handshake that left the Japanese Prime Minister shaken.
Hey! Start the car! But just watch his expression at the end. I feel you.
For a guy who once called the handshake barbaric,
I'm also very much of a germaphobe.
Donald Trump has been risking germs galore with his over-the-top handshakes, many of which include a yank, be it his Supreme Court nominee or his VP. Call it what you will. The pull in, the tug, the yank and pull, the grab and jerk. When he did it to a winner of The Apprentice, it seemed like a tug of war.
Donald Trump can't shake hands right.
The more he likes you, the more he tugs and shakes. Body language expert Chris Ulrich says President Trump starts with a submissive gesture.
His hand is open, almost putting his own hand in like a beggar's pose, giving the other person the upper hand.
But then he reasserts his dominance.
He literally pulls people off their feet, off their balance for a moment.
And he often seals his alpha handshake with a pat, a hand hug. But when SNL's Trump shook with Vladimir Putin, it was Putin who tugged and patted Trump. At least a long handshake gives photographers time to get their shots. When the president asked about the Japanese photogs,
What are they? Please, look at me.
Instead of turning to the photogs as requested, the president gazed at the prime minister.
Thank you, everybody.
On Monday, Canada's leader shook President Trump's hand, but he held his own, resisting any tugging and inspiring headlines like Trudeau one-ups Trump at the handshake game. With Trump yanking at a rate of 2 or 3 times in 10 seconds, you almost need a hand to hold you up. Ginny Mo, CNN, New York.
As you can see from the clip, Trump's handshake is very strong, dominant, almost like he's tugging, and you can see that on others' facial expressions from the look, and that is a war to show political power through impression management, and that is Trump's way to impose the impressions that he's the one in charge. We've come to the next part of these discussions, and that is the ethic of behaving politically. To differentiate between ethical and unethical, there are 3 questions that we need to take into consideration. First one, is it worth the risk? Second, how does the utilities of engaging in political behavior balance our harm or the potential harm it will do to others? The third one is, does the political activity conform to standards of equity and justice? Maybe, for example, I am a manager, and when it comes to performance evaluations, there is one employee who doesn't work as effective as others, but he's really good at managing his impressions. So he's I like him, and at the end of the project, I give him really high rating, not because of his work, but because of the impression he's have made on me. So that is really unfair and injustice. One slight note from the ethic of behaving politically is that the more power one has in hand, the easier it is for him to corrupt, because he has enough power and maybe enough of the network to solve the problem whenever he got caught. We should raise our questions that, how did he have connections that allows him to corrupt? Well, don't corrupt, but we should understand how important it is to have our own political connections. And that brings us to the final part of the discussions, mapping your political career. We all know that politics isn't for politicians only. Utilize political skill can benefit you in positioning yourself for a successful career. The point here is that we don't have to become a Machiavellian. Manipulating or using others will only hurt us in the long run. But if you take time and effort to build authentic relationship, improve your work skill, and provide real value to others, it is possible to succeed at organizational politics with integrity. Not that difficult, so you can start by drawing out a map with a network to formulate a plan to gain more influence and a closer relationship with the targets. First step, draw a power map using circles that show who has the most influence over your career, and in turn, the people who have the most influence over them. Well, in this map, we can see that the book provides us with some circle with human names in it. So the green is a close connection, gold is loose connection, and red, it means that no connection at all. The second step is to figure out what you can offer these influential people. Maybe your expertise, assistant, or way of cultivate unique knowledge that they will find interesting. And finally, make a list of groups you should join to meet the key contacts. These things seem to be very challenging at first, but if you decide to step back out of the game, it means that you're losing, because high chance that your competitor is already on his plan, building his political influence. Sure, hardworking is good, but it will never be good enough, especially in the field of business. So, starting to build your political career now by improving your impression management skill, expanding your network with influential and powerful people in an ethical way, will only gain you benefit as you can broaden your horizon of knowledge, and you have in hand a very powerful tool to achieve your ambitions. Well, that's the end of my part. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.